Horrifying final moments of Guide Lily Adams by Orca. How will this story escalate? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The ocean was calm that morning, the waves gently rolling against the sides of the tour boat as Lily Adams prepared for the day ahead. She had spent years guiding tourists through these waters, sharing her love and knowledge of the marine world. But today felt different. There was an unusual stillness in the air, a quiet tension that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. She shrugged it off as she greeted the excited group of tourists on board, flashing them a bright smile as she adjusted her life vest. Lily had always been fascinated by orcas. She had studied them extensively, tracking their behavior and understanding their complex social structures. Over the years, she had grown particularly fond of a male orca she had nicknamed Titan. He was larger than most orcas she had encountered, his dorsal fin towering above the surface of the water like a black sail. Titan had always seemed playful, often swimming close to the boat and interacting with the tourists. But recently, his behavior had changed. He had been acting erratic, breaching aggressively and displaying unusual levels of agitation. As the boat drifted towards the deeper waters where the pod had been spotted earlier, Lily leaned over the railing, scanning the sea. The tourists chattered excitedly, snapping photos of the endless blue expanse. The captain slowed the boat, allowing everyone to take in the beauty of the open ocean. Then, without warning, a massive black and white figure surfaced right next to the boat, sending a spray of seawater into the air. Titan. A collective gasp filled the boat as the massive orca glided effortlessly through the water, his enormous eyes locking onto Lily. Her breath caught in her throat. There was something different about him today. His usual curiosity was replaced by something deeper, something almost predatory. "He's never been this close before," one of the tourists murmured, their voice tinged with a mix of awe and fear. Lily tried to reassure them. "Orcas are incredibly intelligent. They can sense our energy. Just stay calm and enjoy the moment." But deep inside, she wasn't so sure. She had never seen Titan move like this, circling the boat with an almost calculated precision. Then, without warning, he dived beneath the surface, disappearing into the depths. The water grew eerily still. The tourists murmured amongst themselves, wondering where he had gone. Lily turned to the captain, concern creasing her brow. "Let's keep an eye out. He might just be playing." Just as she finished her sentence, the boat rocked violently. A massive force slammed into the hull, sending several tourists stumbling backward. Lily gripped the railing tightly, her heart pounding. Titan had rammed the boat. A scream rang out from one of the tourists. "What's happening?" Before Lily could respond, Titan breached again, this time even closer. His enormous body crashed back into the sea, sending waves over the deck. The boat rocked dangerously. Panic erupted among the tourists as they struggled to keep their balance. "We need to move out of here," the captain shouted, revving the engine. But before he could maneuver the boat, Titan struck again, this time with even more force. The impact sent Lily tumbling over the side. She hit the water hard, the shock of the cold stealing the breath from her lungs. For a brief moment, she was disoriented, her world spinning as she struggled to find the surface. When she finally broke through, gasping for air, she barely had time to react before she saw him. Titan was coming straight for her. The boat loomed above her, the panicked shouts of the tourists ringing in her ears. But all Lily could focus on was the massive orca charging toward her with terrifying speed. She tried to swim towards a boat, her arms slicing through the water as fast as they could, but she knew she was no match for Titan's speed. The orca closed the distance in seconds. Lily barely had time to take a deep breath before she felt it, an enormous force slamming into her legs, dragging her downward. The world above disappeared in an instant, swallowed by the deep blue. She thrashed wildly, trying to break free, but Titan's grip was unrelenting. Panic set in as the pressure of the depth squeezed her lungs. She struggled against the sheer power of the orca, her mind racing with terror. This wasn't playfulness. This wasn't curiosity. This was something else. Lily's lungs burned as Titan had dragged her deeper into the abyss, the light above growing dimmer with every second. She kicked and twisted, trying to free herself, but the orca's strength was overwhelming. Her mind screamed for air, her instincts taking over as she fought with every ounce of energy she had left. Then, just as suddenly as he had pulled her down, Titan released her. The force sent her spiraling upward, her arms flailing as she desperately clawed towards the surface. Her vision blurred, headlight from the lack of oxygen. She had seconds before unconsciousness would claim her. With one final push, she broke through the surface, gasping, choking, her body trembling from the exertion. The shouts of the tourists filled the air, their panicked voices blending into a chaotic symphony. The boat was still nearby, but the water between her and safety felt like an endless expanse. She forced her limbs to move, each stroke sending waves of pain through her exhausted body. Then, the water around her shifted. A massive shadow loomed beneath her, the unmistakable form of Titan circling once more. Her breath hitched in her throat. He wasn't done. She barely had time to react before Titan surged upward, his enormous body breaking the surface beside her. The sheer force of his movement sent waves crashing around her, pushing her back. Lily barely managed to stay afloat. Titan hovered there for a moment, his massive, intelligent eyes locking onto hers. And then, without warning, he lunged. Lily screamed as she felt his powerful jaws clamp around her midsection, not with the crushing force of a predator, but firm enough to trap her. She struggled, pounding against his sleek skin, but he didn't relent. He dove again, dragging her with him. This time, Lily had no air left to hold. Her chest burned, her vision blurred, and the world around her darkened as she felt herself sinking. A wave of regret crashed over her, mingling with the sheer terror of her situation. Was this really how it would end? Was this where her love for the ocean would betray her? Just as she felt the edges of unconsciousness creeping in, Titan released her again, this time launching her upward with incredible force. Her body shot toward the surface, and within moments she burst through, coughing and gasping for air. A life ring hit the water beside her. The crew. With the last bit of strength she had, she reached for it, her fingers gripping the rope like a lifeline. Hands pulled her up, lifting her out of the water and onto the deck. She collapsed, her body convulsing from exhaustion, her lungs heaving as she sucked in greedy gulps of air. The tourists stared wide, their faces pale with shock. She's alive," one of them whispered, as if speaking too loudly would shatter the fragile moment. Lily rolled onto her back, her chest rising and falling in uneven gasps. Her body ached, her mind reeled, but she was alive. Then, as she lay there staring at the sky, a shadow moved in the water. Titan had surfaced again, his massive body gliding alongside the boat. He wasn't attacking anymore. He was watching. Lily turned her head slightly, her trembling fingers curling into the wet deck beneath her. What had just happened? Had he been playing with her? Testing her? Or had he truly meant to kill her? No one spoke as Titan let out a deep guttural sound before sinking back into the depths. And just like that, he was gone. Lily exhaled shakily, closing her eyes. The ocean had always been unpredictable, but today, it had felt personal. She had stared into the eyes of a predator and lived to tell the tale. But deep down, she knew this wasn't the end. Titan would be back. And next time, she might not be so lucky. Lily remained on the deck, her body trembling from exhaustion as the adrenaline began to fade. The tourists continued to stare at her in stunned silence, their expressions a mix of horror and disbelief. The ocean was eerily calm now, as if it had not just been the stage for a life-or-death struggle. A crew member knelt beside her, pressing a warm towel to her shoulders. "Lily, are you okay?" His voice was gentle, but edged with concern. She nodded weakly, though every fiber of her being screamed otherwise. Her ribs ached from Titan's grip, and her lungs still burned from nearly drowning. But she was alive. Somehow, against all odds, she had survived. The captain of the boat stepped forward, his weathered face pale. "We need to get back to shore," he announced, his voice firm. "This tour is over." No one argued. As the boat began its journey back, Lily sat up slowly, her muscles protesting with every movement. She turned her gaze toward the water, searching for any sign of Titan. He was gone. Just like that, the realization sent a chill down her spine. Had it been a warning? A game? Or was he simply testing his strength against a human for the first time? She had spent years studying orcas, believing she understood their behavior. But Titan was different. He was unpredictable. "Lily," one of the tourists hesitantly spoke up. Have you ever seen anything like that before?" She swallowed hard, shaking her head. "No," she admitted. "Never." For the rest of the journey back, the boat remained silent. The tourists, who had been so excited to see an orca up close, now sat in uneasy contemplation. Some whispered among themselves, their voices laced with fear. By the time they reached the marina, a small crowd had gathered, likely drawn by the sight of the returning tour boat coming in ahead of schedule. As the vessel docked, Lily forced herself to stand, her legs unsteady beneath her. She had barely stepped onto the pier when reporters swarmed her. "Lily Adams, we heard there was an attack. What happened? Was the orca trying to kill you? Do you think Titan is dangerous?" The flashing cameras, the overwhelming voices, it was too much. Lily held up her hands, her mind still spinning from everything that had happened. "No comment," she managed, pushing past the reporters. The Marine Center director, Daniel Hayes, was already waiting for her. His face was unreadable, but she could see the tension in his stance. "We need to talk," he said quietly, leading her away from the chaos. Inside the research facility, Daniel closed the door behind them. "Lily, tell me exactly what happened out there." She took a shaky breath, recounting every terrifying detail. The initial curiosity, the sudden attack, the moment Titan dragged her into the depths. As she spoke, Daniel's expression darkened. "This isn't normal," he muttered, rubbing his jaw. "Titan has always been a bit unpredictable, but this is something else." Lily hesitated before voicing the thought that had haunted her since the moment she climbed back onto the boat. "What if he's testing us?" Daniel frowned. "Testing us?" She nodded, her pulse quickening. "Orcas are highly intelligent. They observe. They learn. What if Titan is pushing boundaries? Seeing how far he can go with humans?" The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Daniel exhaled sharply. "If that's the case, we have a serious problem. A lot of people come here to see him. If he decides to do this again, someone might not be as lucky as you were." A sinking feeling settled in Lily's chest. She had spent her entire life advocating for marine life, working to bridge the gap between humans and the ocean's most intelligent creatures. But now she was facing a dilemma she had never prepared for. Was Titan a threat? Or was he trying to send a message? Either way, one thing was certain, this wasn't over. Titan would return, and next time she needed to be ready. Lily sat in the dimly lit research office long after Daniel had left, staring blankly at the computer screen in front of her. The footage from the boat's onboard cameras had been uploaded, allowing her to replay the events in slow motion. Each frame showed Titan's calculated movements, his approach, the moment he pulled her into the water, the seconds where she fought against his strength. But what haunted her the most was the final moment before he let go. His eyes, the way he had looked at her. She had studied orcas for years, had always admired their intelligence and complex social structures. But what she saw in Titan's gaze wasn't mere curiosity or even aggression. It was something else. A warning. Test? A game? She leaned back in her chair, rubbing her face with both hands. This incident would spread like wildfire. The tourists had captured it on their phones, and it was only a matter of time before the news ran with the story. Wild orca attacks marine biologists would make headlines worldwide. Her phone buzzed on the desk. When she picked it up, she saw dozens of missed calls, reporters, researchers, even her family. Everyone wanted to know what had happened. She couldn't answer. She didn't know what to say. A knock at the door startled her. When she turned, she found Daniel standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Lily, we have a problem," he said. She gestured toward the computer screen. "I know. The footage is already circulating." "That's not what I meant," Daniel said, stepping inside and shutting the door. "A fishing crew just called in a report." He hesitated. Titan attacked another boat. Lily felt her stomach drop. "What?" Daniel nodded grimly. This time, he wasn't just playing around. He rammed the boat hard, broke part of the hull, nearly capsized them. Lily shot to her feet. "Is everyone okay?" "They're shaken up, but no serious injuries." He exhaled sharply. "Lily, I think you were right. He's testing us, and I don't know how far he's willing to go." She grabbed her jacket, already knowing what she had to do. "We need to get out there," she said firmly. "No." Daniel hesitated. "Lily, are you sure that's a good idea? After what just happened to you?" "I don't have a choice," she said, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her chest. "I need to see him again. I need to understand. Within the hour, Lily and a small crew were back on the water, scanning the horizon for any sign of Titan. The ocean was eerily quiet, the waves lapping gently against the hull. "Do you really think he'll show up again?" one of the crew members asked. Lily gripped the railing, her eyes fixed on the endless blue. "He will." And then, as if summoned by her words, a massive shadow emerged beneath the boat. Titan. The Orca surfaced slowly, his sleek body cutting through the water with effortless grace. He was close, closer than Lily had ever seen him approach voluntarily. The crew tensed, waiting to see what he would do. Lily's pulse pounded as she crouched at the edge of the boat, making sure to keep her movements slow and deliberate. "Titan," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. The Orca's massive eye locked onto hers. Then, to her utter shock, he nudged something toward the boat. A piece of debris. Lily's breath caught in her throat. It was a splintered section of wood, part of the fishing boat he had attacked. It wasn't an accident. He was showing her what he had done. A chill ran down her spine. Titan wasn't just attacking boats. He was sending a message, and Lily was terrified to find out what it meant. Lily's fingers curled around the railing, her knuckles white with tension as she stared at the broken piece of wood floating beside the boat. The entire crew was silent, watching in stunned disbelief as Titan remained just beneath the surface, his massive form outlined in the shifting currents. His eye remained locked on Lily, unblinking, waiting. She knew this wasn't random. It wasn't aggression for the sake of aggression. Titan was communicating. The question was, what was he trying to say? Daniel stepped up beside her. "He knows exactly what he's doing," he murmured. Lily nodded slowly. "He's testing boundaries." The water stirred again, and Titan let out a low, echoing vocalization that sent vibrations rippling through the hull of the boat. It wasn't the high-pitched calls or clicks Orcas used to communicate with their pods. It was something different. A challenge. A warning. Lily swallowed hard and did the only thing she could think of. She reached for the debris floating in the water. With careful, deliberate movements, she scooped it up and held it out toward Titan. "What are you doing?" Daniel hissed. She ignored him. Titan let out another vocalization, this one sharper, more urgent. Then, without warning, he flipped onto his back and disappeared beneath the boat. The entire vessel shifted, rocked by the force of his movement. The crew scrambled to maintain balance, but Lily held firm, her eyes scanning the water frantically. "Where did he go?" one of the crew members asked, his voice tense. No one answered. The ocean was still. Too still. A heartbeat later, Titan exploded out of the water in a breach, so massive that a wave crashed over the deck, drenching Lily and everyone on board. He came down with a force that shook the boat violently, sending several people staggering backward. Then, as suddenly as he had appeared, he was gone again. Silence. Lily wiped the salt water from her face, her mind racing. That wasn't an attack. It wasn't an accident. It was a display of power. A warning. "Lily, we need to go," Daniel said urgently. No. She hesitated. Everything inside her screamed that she needed to stay, to figure out what was happening. But Titan's message had been clear. He was done playing. With a heavy heart, she gave a single nod. "Let's go." The crew wasted no time in starting the engines and turning the boat toward shore. As they sped away, Lily cast one last glance over her shoulder. Titan was there, just beneath the surface, watching. She had no doubt that this wasn't over. Not even close. Back on land, the aftermath of Titan's actions was already spiraling out of control. News stations were running stories about the attack on the fishing boat, and rumors were spreading about his growing aggression. Some experts were calling for intervention, for Titan to be relocated, or worse. Lily sat in the Marine Center's control room, her hands pressed together as she listened to a heated debate between conservationists and government officials over what to do next. "He's becoming a danger to humans," one of the officials argued. "We can't just ignore this." "He's not the problem," Lily shot back. "We don't understand why he's behaving this way yet. And how long do we wait before someone gets seriously hurt?" the official countered. "Or killed." A heavy silence settled over the room. Lily exhaled sharply. "Just give me more time." The official shook his head. Time is running out. And Lily knew he was right. Because Titan wasn't just testing limits anymore. He was preparing for something bigger. And she had no idea how to stop it. Lily sat at the edge of the dock, her gaze locked onto the vast horizon. The salty breeze played with her damp hair, but her thoughts were elsewhere, deep beneath the waves where Titan lurked. He was more than just an orca to her. He was an enigma, an apex predator who had always seemed to understand her in ways she couldn't explain. And now, that connection was slipping through her fingers, turning into something far more dangerous. Daniel approached cautiously, a steaming mug of coffee in his hands. "You haven't slept," he observed, offering her the cup. She accepted it without a word, wrapping her fingers around the warmth. "I can't stop thinking about him," she admitted. "This isn't random. It's deliberate." Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I get it, Lily. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, what if he's not the same Titan anymore? What if something changed?" Lily took a slow sip, her jaw tightening. She knew Daniel was right. Titan had always been different, always walked the fine line between curiosity and dominance. But never like this. Never with this level of intent. "We need to go back out there," she said finally. Daniel stared at her. "Lily, I have to understand," she interrupted, her voice firm. "If we just walk away now, we're letting them decide his fate." Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line, but he didn't argue. He knew her too well. She wasn't going to stop until she had answers. The next morning, they boarded the boat before sunrise, the water still black under the faint glow of the moon. The rest of the crew was tense, their movements careful, their eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting Titan to strike at any moment. Lily stood at the bow, heart hammering in her chest as they approached the last known location of the breaches. The water was eerily still, the kind of silence that made her stomach tighten with unease. Then the first ripple appeared. A massive dorsal fin sliced through the surface, gliding effortlessly through the waves. Titan. Lily exhaled sharply. He was here, but something was different. Titan wasn't alone. A second dorsal fin appeared beside him. Then a third. A pod. Lily's breath caught in her throat. She'd always known Titan was part of a larger group, but he'd never brought them this close to the human boats before. "What's he doing?" Daniel whispered. Lily had no idea. Titan let out a long, guttural call, a sound so deep it resonated through the hull of the boat. The other orcas responded, their clicks and whistles creating an eerie chorus that filled the air. Then, with one synchronized motion, they all dove. Lily's pulse skyrocketed. "Get the hydrophone in the water," she ordered. One of the crew members hurried to lower the underwater microphone. The speakers crackled to life with a symphony of orca sounds, clicks, whistles, low-frequency rumbles. Lily closed her eyes, listening. Titan's call was different this time. Urgent, repetitive, a warning. She opened her eyes just in time to see the first shadow rise from the deep, a shape too large to be an orca. The water split open as something massive surged upward, a great white shark, its sleek form cutting through the waves like a torpedo. It circled the boat once before disappearing beneath the surface again. Titan and his pod resurfaced, their movements sharp and calculated. They weren't just swimming. They were hunting. Lily's blood ran cold. Orcas hunted sharks. It was rare, but it happened. And it was always strategic, coordinated. But this wasn't just any hunt. This was a battle. And Titan was leading the charge. The ocean became a battlefield. Titan and his pod moved in coordinated, calculated strikes, forcing the great white into a defensive pattern. Lily had seen orcas hunt before, but never like this. The precision, the strategy. It was terrifying and mesmerizing all at once. The great white turned sharply, trying to break free, but Titan was faster. He surged forward, his powerful body slicing through the water, and rammed the shark with bone-crushing force. The impact sent a violent ripple through the surface, rocking the boat slightly. Lily gripped the railing, her breath caught in her throat. "This isn't a hunt," Daniel murmured beside her. "It's a message." Lily's fingers dug into the cold metal. A message for whom? The shark? Them? Titan circled back, his pod mirroring his movements. The great white, dazed and injured, tried to escape, but another orca cut it off, forcing it back into the pod's formation. The attack was relentless, coordinated, each orca taking its turn delivering a devastating blow. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it ended. The great white, now lifeless, floated just beneath the surface, blood seeping into the waves. Titan nudged the body once, then let it drift away. The pod didn't feast. They didn't drag it down. They simply left it. The statement. Lily's heart pounded in her chest. She turned to Daniel, who looked just as shaken. "What the hell was that?" one of the crew members muttered. Lily swallowed hard. "An execution." The word left a heavy silence in its wake. No one spoke as the boat gently rocked on the water, the weight of what they just witnessed settling deep into their bones. Titan resurfaced, his dark eyes locking onto Lily's. She felt it again. That pull. That unspoken understanding. Titan had shown her something. But what? Before she could process, the Orca let out another deep guttural call. The pod responded in kind, their haunting voices carrying over the waves. Then, without hesitation, they dove beneath the surface, disappearing into the depths. Gone. Lily exhaled shakily. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "We need to get back." She nodded, still staring at the empty horizon. But something told her this wasn't over. The boat cut through the waves, its engine humming a steady rhythm against the eerie silence that had settled over the crew. No one spoke. No one moved unnecessarily. They were all still reeling from what they had just witnessed. Lily sat at the edge of the deck, staring into the darkening waters, her mind racing. Titan had communicated something important. But the meaning behind it eluded her. Daniel sat beside her, his elbows resting on his knees, his face troubled. "I've worked in marine biology for over a decade, and I've never seen anything like that. Orcas don't just kill sharks for no reason. They hunt to eat to survive. But that was calculated. That was," he hesitated, searching for the right words. "Intentional," Lily finished for him. "They wanted us to see it." Daniel ran a hand through his damp hair. But why? What were they trying to tell us? Lily clenched her jaw. The memory of Titan's eyes locking onto her sent a chill down her spine. She had seen intelligence in animals before, but this was different. This was understanding. As they neared the harbor, Lily's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, glancing at the screen. A message from Dr. Meredith Carter, one of the leading researchers in orca behavior. "We need to talk. Something big is happening. Call me the moment you dock." Lily's stomach twisted. Meredith wasn't one for exaggeration. If she was sending a message like this, it meant something serious was going on. The boat finally reached the dock, and as soon as they tied off, Lily jumped onto the pier, her hands already dialing Meredith's number. The phone rang once before a breathless voice answered. "Lily, thank God. Tell me you saw it." Lily froze. "Saw what?" "The attack," Meredith said quickly. "A pod of orcas took down a great white today. But not just any pod, Titans." Lily's grip tightened on the phone. "You knew. I've been tracking them for weeks. Something's different. They're not acting like normal orcas anymore." Lily swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" There was a pause on the other end. "They're hunting differently. Moving differently. There have been reports up and down the coast. Titan's pod has been eliminating great whites wherever they find them. And they're doing it in a way that suggests coordination, planning." Lily felt her heartbeat quicken. "You think it's, what? Evolution?" Heavy sigh. "I think they're sending a warning." Lily's chest tightened. "To who?" Meredith hesitated. "I don't know. But listen to me, Lily, something is coming. And whatever it is, Titan knows." Lily's breath caught. The pull she had felt earlier, the message Titan had been trying to send, it wasn't just about the shark. It was bigger than that. And suddenly, the ocean didn't feel so familiar anymore. Lily stood frozen on the dock, the weight of Meredith's words pressing down on her chest. The sea breeze was cold against her damp skin, but she barely noticed. Titan knew something. The thought rattled around in her mind, sending chills through her entire body. Daniel caught up to her, his brow furrowed in concern. "Lily? What did she say?" She turned to him, her voice quieter than usual. "She's been tracking Titan's pod. This wasn't an isolated incident. They've been hunting sharks up and down the coast. Meredith thinks. She thinks they're sending a message." Daniel's lips parted slightly as if he wanted to argue, to rationalize. But instead, he ran a hand over his face. "Sending a message to who?" Lily shook her head. That's the part we don't know. The rest of the crew was securing the boat, their voices distant, their minds likely trying to process the same surreal events that Lily and Daniel were grappling with. But as Lily turned to face the water once more, something deep inside her stirred. She knew she couldn't just walk away from this. "I need to see Titan again," she murmured. Daniel stiffened. "Lily, we just barely got out of there in one piece. You really want to go back out there?" She nodded. "I don't think we have a choice." That night, Lily barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Titan, his massive body slicing through the water, his gaze locked onto hers as if trying to tell her something. Over and over, the image played in her mind until she finally gave up on sleep entirely. By morning, she had made her decision. She met Daniel and the others at the docks just as the sun began to rise. The sky was painted in soft pinks and oranges, casting a gentle glow over the restless ocean. "You're really doing this, huh?" Daniel asked, already knowing the answer. Lily nodded. "If something big is happening, we need to understand it before it's too late." The crew, still shaken from the day before, hesitated but ultimately agreed. There was something irresistible about the mystery unfolding before them, something they couldn't turn away from. As they pushed off from the dock, the familiar hum of the boat's engine filled the morning air. But this time, the anticipation was different. This wasn't just another dive, another research trip. This was something else entirely. Lily sat at the bow, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, calm and unassuming. But she knew better now. Beneath the surface, something was changing. Hours passed before they reached the area where they had last seen Titan's pod. The tension on the boat was palpable as Lily and Daniel suited up. "Last chance to back out," Daniel said, forcing a weak smile. Lily smirked. "Not a chance." With that, they plunged into the water. The ocean swallowed them whole, its vastness stretching in every direction. Sunlight trickled through the surface, illuminating the endless blue, but Lily felt no sense of peace. She scanned her surroundings, searching for any sign of Titan. Minutes passed. Then something moved in the distance. A shadow. No, several. Lily's breath hitched as Titan and his pod emerged from the depths, gliding toward them with an eerie grace. But something was different this time. They weren't alone. A second pod of Orcas swam alongside them. Their movements synchronized, their presence almost deliberate. Lily's pulse quickened. Two pods, moving as one. And then she saw it. Beyond them, further in the deep, a massive shape loomed. At first, she thought it was another whale, perhaps a blue whale or a humpback. But as the creature moved closer, a sinking realization settled in her gut. This was no whale. Its outline was monstrous, its movement slow and deliberate. It was something else entirely. Something ancient. Titan and the other Orcas formed a wall between it and Lily, their bodies shifting into a defensive stance. Lily's entire body screamed at her to swim back to the boat, to get as far away from this thing as possible. But she couldn't move. She had to understand. And as the massive shape drifted closer, the water around them turned deathly still. Titan turned to her, and in his eyes she saw the truth. This was what he had been trying to warn her about. And now it was too late to turn back. Lily's breath came in sharp, ragged pulls through her regulator. The water around her felt heavier, the pressure almost suffocating as the monstrous shadow loomed closer. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, larger than any whale, its silhouette jagged and uneven, as if time itself had shaped it into something unnatural. Titan and the other Orcas remained still, their usual fluid movements replaced with rigid focus. They were not afraid. They were waiting. The massive creature drifted through the water, its enormous body cutting through the deep blue with terrifying grace. It was ancient, its thick, scarred skin bearing the marks of time. Lily had studied oceanic life for years, but there was nothing in any record, scientific or mythical, that could explain what she was seeing. Then it turned. The movement was slow, deliberate, as if it had finally noticed her presence. And in that moment, Lily felt something she had never experienced before. Primal fear. She was being watched, not like an animal watches prey. Not even like Titan had studied her before. This was different. It was intelligent. A deep, low-frequency rumble vibrated through the water, so powerful that Lily felt it in her bones. Titan responded immediately, his own call echoing back in defiance. The rest of the orcas joined in, their vocalizations forming an eerie chorus that filled the vastness of the ocean. Lily had never felt so small. Daniel grabbed her arm, signaling frantically toward the boat above. It was the only logical choice to get out of the water before they were caught between whatever was about to happen. But Lily hesitated. Titan had shown her the shark attack for a reason. He had brought her here for a reason. She couldn't leave now. She turned back just in time to see the massive creature move. It was impossibly fast. One moment, it hovered in the distance. The next, it was surging forward. The orcas scattered, their powerful tails cutting through the water as they evaded the massive beast. Titan was the only one who held his ground. Lily's heart pounded as she watched, her body frozen in place. Then, with a motion so precise it defied logic, Titan dove toward the creature, ramming his massive body into its side. The impact sent a shockwave through the water. The creature reeled, its enormous form twisting in response, but it did not retreat. Instead, it retaliated. Lily had no time to react before a force unlike anything she had ever felt ripped through the ocean. A powerful current surged outward, slamming into her with bone-crushing force. She was sent tumbling backward, spinning helplessly as the world blurred around her. Somewhere in the chaos, she lost sight of Titan. She lost sight of everything. And for the first time in her life, she truly believed she was going to die. The water darkened around her, the last bits of sunlight disappearing as she was pulled deeper into the abyss. Her vision blurred, her body screaming for air. This was it. The ocean had finally claimed her. Then something grabbed her. Not with teeth, not with force, with purpose. Titan. Lily barely registered the sensation of being lifted, a water rushing past her in a blur of light and darkness. And then suddenly, she was breaking through the surface. Air filled her burning lungs as she gasped, coughing violently as she fought to regain control of her body. Strong arms grabbed her, hauling her onto the deck of the boat. Voices shouted around her, but her mind was still spinning, still trapped in the depths where the impossible had just unfolded. She turned her head weakly, her gaze locking onto the ocean. Titan surfaced, his massive body gliding through the water, his eyes never leaving hers. He had saved her, but not because she was in danger. Because she needed to see. She needed to understand. This wasn't just about Titan. This wasn't just about the sharks. Something was waking up. Something ancient. And Titan had just declared war. Lily lay on the deck, her body trembling as she tried to process what had just happened. Her lungs burned from the salt water she had inhaled, her muscles weak from the sheer force of the ocean's fury. But none of that mattered. Her mind was consumed by one thought. Titan had saved her, not out of instinct, not because she was part of his world, because he needed her to know. Daniel knelt beside her, gripping her shoulder. "Lily, can you hear me?" She turned her head slightly, locking eyes with him. She could see the fear in his expression, the same disbelief that was crawling under her own skin. "What the hell was that?" he demanded, his voice barely steady. Lily's lips parted, but no words came. How could she possibly explain what she had seen, what she had felt? The thing in the water, so massive, so ancient, it wasn't supposed to exist. And yet it did. Titan surfaced again, his enormous body cutting through the waves with slow, deliberate movements. He let out a long, deep vocalization, a sound that reverberated through the air and sent a shiver down Lily's spine. It wasn't a call for help. It was a declaration. A warning. The other orcas surfaced beside him, their bodies moving in perfect synchronization. They had formed a wall, their presence unmistakably protective, as if they were shielding the boat from whatever lay beneath. The crew was silent. No one dared to speak. Then, as if answering Titan's call, the water behind them shifted. Lily's breath hitched as a shadow moved below the surface. It was still there, watching, and it wasn't leaving. Titan let out another guttural sound, but this time, it was different. It wasn't aggression. It wasn't a challenge. It was a message. A moment later, he and the pod dove in unison, disappearing into the deep. The ocean fell silent. Lily sat up slowly, ignoring the way her limbs ached. She stared at the spot where Titan had vanished, her mind racing. He had shown her everything, the shark, the hunt, the danger. But what if this wasn't the end? What if it was just the beginning? Daniel exhaled sharply beside her, rubbing his face. Lily, we have to tell someone. She turned to him, shaking her head. Tell them what? That we saw something out here that shouldn't exist? That Titan, an Orca, has been trying to warn us? Do you really think they'll believe us? Daniel hesitated, but the truth was in his silence. No one would believe them. Lily pushed herself to her feet, gripping the railing as she stared into the endless blue. We need to go back, she said. Daniel's eyes widened. Lily. No, she cut in, her voice steady. We need to understand this. If Titan knows something we don't, we can't ignore it. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had all seen the same thing. They had all felt it. And deep down, they knew the truth. Something was waking up. Something powerful. And Titan was ready. As the boat turned back toward shore, Lily's fingers tightened on the railing. She had spent her entire life studying the ocean, believing she understood it. But now she realized something far more terrifying. She had only just begun to scratch the surface.